Hi everyone, hope you can hear me. Got quite a few people on. If we can just keep muted and videos off, please, just for bandwidth considerations. I just want to be careful. I know some people are logging in on iPhones and tablets and things like that, and I know the more video that we have on, the better. So thank you for that, Nick. We'll give everyone a couple of minutes. I hope everyone's had a good day. Hi, Sandra. How are you going?
Good, thanks. Hi, Jack.
So we just, Sandra, just before you jumped on, I just asked if everyone can just go on videos off and mute, and just to save bandwidth for people as they're coming in. So yeah, just keep it on mute and videos off, and we'll get started in a minute or so. We've got quite a few people already in the call, as we can see. So all right, well, actually, let's get started, and people can join us as they come. For anyone who doesn't know me, my name's Jackie Strachan. I am a solicitor, and I run a law firm, SMS Law, up in Brisbane. And I'm leading this webinar with Jackie Strachan from HR Tactics and Roger Hawley from Hawley Accounting. So I wanted to run through a little bit of an intro first, give some perspectives from me as a lawyer, and then I'll shift over to Jackie and then Roger. At the end, once we've gone through a 15-20 minute presentation, there'll be the opportunity to ask questions, and you can ask as many questions as you like. If you don't know the Zoom facility, down the bottom is a chat box, and you can, if you click on that, you can ask a chat, and you can actually send a chat directly to anyone in there. You can ask it to everyone, or you can send it directly to me or anyone, and I'll facilitate a chat at that time, and so that we can go through. I will say too that we are recording this webinar, but as far as any questions that you ask, we will not have those questions go in any video that goes public. We will have the introduction part go onto Facebook and various other platforms to help other people with what we're talking about. But any questions that you ask, you can feel free to know that we're not going to share any of that information publicly, and it will just remain with us. We just want to be sure that we can answer any questions as we go along. So all right, so this idea to have this mastermind, or this call, was born out of a mastermind that I run called the Business Alliance Mastermind, that both Jackie and Roger are part of. And we're a group that meets once a week, and we're really designed to help business owners. And what is going on in the world right now, I just want to set the scene a little bit first. It's not going to be a short problem that we're going to encounter. This is going to go on for a while. It will change the way that business operates. And as business owners and leaders in our communities and in our businesses, we need to embrace that. As one of my favorite authors, Rich Dad, from Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Keith Cunningham, he says, a crisis is a terrible thing to waste. I don't say that flippantly. There's many opportunities that come out of crisis, and we need to be able to embrace those and move forward. The first thing is a bit of reassurance. The world is not ending. The world has been through a lot of these things before. I'm not trying to downplay the significance to people's health and the world economy. This is a significant event. And the government is, in my personal opinion, doing everything they can to protect the business, community, and health at the same time. I can't imagine how difficult a task that must be for them. I speak to a lot of people every day, and I hear conspiracy theories all the time. In my personal view, again, I don't believe there's any conspiracies going on. I think we're being told everything that is necessary and everything that is necessary for us. I think that one of the problems is that the government and what they're doing, it changes so rapidly. And so this is something that we need to be aware of. And we can look at what other countries have done. Just last night, the UK went into or recommended everyone work from home, and schools were shut. That's something that may happen here, and so we need to be prepared for that. And I always say with journalists and the media, the journalists have that mantra, if it bleeds, it leads. So they're always trying to get eyeballs to watch and read their stories, and that together with social media is, in what I'm seeing, creating a lot of fear, anxiety, and panic. I don't think there's any reason to panic. There will always be food supplies. And I always say to people, this is not the zombie apocalypse. We're going to still have electricity. We're still going to have water. We're still going to have all the basic essential services. I wanted to talk just briefly about what we're doing in this webinar. So we want to give you information, and that's real information about what is happening right now. So I brought together experts, as I said before, from the mastermind, to give you real-time information on what has to happen and what already has happened. So as I said before, for those who've jumped on since then, I've got Jackie Strachan from HR Tactics, and she's an employment expert. And she's here to answer your questions and to give you advice about dealing with your employees. And I've got Roger Hawley from Hawley Accounting, who's going to talk about the government incentives and what the government's doing now, and give all the information that we have now, because it is a changing feast. I have another expert on the call who's a commercial real estate agent, Ashley Rees, and he's, if there's any questions anyone's got on property and leasing, then we can throw to him. So thank you, Ashley, for jumping on. I should stress, this is, as I said before, it's been recorded, that this webinar is being recorded on Thursday, the 19th of March at 6:30 p.m. And what we're giving you today is the information that we know right now and is the most current that we have. We're going to be doing more webinars. I should point that out. This is a fluid situation. It's going to be changing week by week, day by day, really. We're not going to do daily webinars unless we need to. But we're going to do probably one a week, just to assure you and to go through what you need to do and what you need to do to really protect yourself and your business going forward, and make sure that you're getting the right advice. Because one of the biggest problems that I see in this kind of situation is that people don't get the right advice. They don't know who to talk to. And so we're here to actually help that. As I said before, please ask questions by putting them in the chat box. If you want to ask a question and actually, like say it out loud, you don't feel like typing it, or you prefer to say it rather than type it, please just let me know, and I'm happy to, as we go through this. We've scheduled this webinar to go for 2 hours. We're here to answer your questions as much as we need. Hopefully we can answer them quickly and go through that, but we're here to advise you guys and ladies and help you as much as we can. A little bit of an update on the numbers. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but worldwide, at the last count that I saw, there's a little over 210,000 diagnosed cases of this thing, but that's in a population of 7.5 billion. And in Australia, there are currently 687 diagnosed cases in a country with a population of 25 million. Now, this has jumped recently, like today. I think it almost doubled, and it will continue to do that over a period of time. So we need to be aware of that. And so that's one of the reasons why it's such an ever-moving feast. Remember too, if you see in the numbers, the mortality rate that they mentioned, that number is often way overinflated, because the actual number of people who have the virus don't know that they have it, and so it'll be a long time till we know what the actual mortality rate is. As I said before, this is a landscape that's changing rapidly. This is a contagious disease, but the vast majority of people won't be harmed by it and will have little illness. The concern is obviously that it's highly contagious, and if everyone got it at once, as I understand that the real concern is that there just would not be enough beds for the people who need it the most. So we need to protect the sick, the elderly, and the vulnerable in our community, whilst doing everything in our power to keep the economy moving. That's what I wanted to say about the actual situation we face. I just briefly want to talk about the legal considerations. There are a plethora of legal considerations. As you can imagine, we're fielding calls for all sorts of matters as small to medium-sized business lawyers. What I'd say first is a lot of you will have contracts. You might have leases, you might have building contracts, you might have supplier agreements, all sorts of agreements. Every single agreement needs to be looked at separately to see how what is happening will actually affect you and your business. You need to have a look at them. Two major principles that I wanted to mention. There's a principle that you may have heard of, is called force majeure. These are clauses that are often in leases, and they basically provide, if there's an outside event outside the party's control that stops a business from being able to operate, then certain steps can be taken. Often a lease can be terminated. Often a lease can be paused. No two clauses are the same though. And so you might want to check, if you're concerned about a contract, that whether a clause is in that contract, depending on what you want. There's also a principle in law called frustration. And it's funny, I was actually just talking to Roger about this before we started the webinar, that it's a name that he heard when he was studying law as part of his accounting degree. And it's something that in 16 years of being a lawyer, I've never actually had to use and actually apply in the past. So basically what it means is if you simply can't perform a contract because of the shutdown or because something's closed, for instance, like a supplier agreement for a stadium where they can no longer hold events, then that can be terminated because of this doctrine of frustration. So those are two legal principles. It's very specific, advice, if you want specific advice, we're going to have to have a look at contracts and all the rest of it. But there are two ways that you can look at around getting around contracts. Another point that I would make is that I'd really encourage you, if you're owed money by people, try and get it paid ASAP. If money does dry up or slow down, the more money you can get paid now, the better. And I also would encourage you to think about your business continuity plans. I'm not going to go through in detail what that is, how to build one anyway. But a business continuity plan is a plan of, can you have people work remotely? How are your systems going to operate? All manner of things that continue your business when you're going. I know in our law firm, we've set up all of our team from working from home. Everything's cloud-based, and so we're quite lucky in that industry. So before I hand over to Jackie to talk through some of the strategies with the team, I just wanted to give you a few ideas that have come from my community about what we can do. So a lot of people feel helpless. They feel they're stuck at, if they're going to be stuck at home, or if they are stuck at home, what can they do to move forward? And a few of these I really love, so I wanted to share them on tonight's call. One of them is 5-Star Friday. One thing that we can do if we're sitting at home on a computer is we can give 5-star reviews to other people in our community, other restaurants, other businesses, other people that we need to help out, because that will help them when all of this dies down, to get more people into their businesses by being able to see. So I like the idea of 5-Star Friday. I thought it was a good idea. Buying gift vouchers, if you want to, you can buy gift vouchers to help other businesses. There are obviously ramifications for that if businesses fold. However, if you want to support businesses, then you can buy gift vouchers. And also, I think if you know someone who's quarantined, reach out to them. This technology, Zoom, has been around for many years, but so many people don't know about it. I was on a call yesterday with a Innovate Moreton Bay team, and if anyone's on the call, you know who you are. I deal with these guys regularly, and a lot of them didn't even know in the innovation space that this technology existed. And there's so much that we can do in 2020 to help people from a technology point of view. So feel free to use this technology. It's very cheap, it's very affordable, and it's very cost effective. So they're tips that we can use to actually move forward. So I'm going to hand over to Jackie. And for people who've come on late, I have asked everyone just to cancel your video, if you don't mind, just to reduce bandwidth, because we have got some people on phones and things like that, and it can cause those problems. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I'll be back after Jackie goes through what she's got to talk about, and then I'll get Roger in on the call. So Jackie, you want to unmute yourself and go through.
Hey, Jeremy, thanks very much. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining the call with us. So my role here is talking about HR, things from HR perspective. And I just want to start by saying that although this webinar is about sharing our knowledge, that, we want everyone to be more alert than alarmed. We're certainly not playing down the situation by saying, we all need to stay calm. We acknowledge that, it's no small issue, the World Health Organization declaring a state of emergency. But I also want to acknowledge that the coronavirus pandemic comes as many Australians are still feeling the impact of recent bushfires, floods, droughts. So yeah, I speak on behalf of the guys. I know our thoughts are certainly with those who are feeling overwhelmed by the situation at the moment, and to those that are looking down the barrel of potentially being out of pocket. Okay, so the objectives here for employers are really twofold. As Jeremy said, to maximise business continuity, but also whilst making sure you're meeting your legal obligations under the two areas of legislation that management of workers is governed by, and those are workplace health and safety legislation and fair work legislation. So let's go through some of those obligations of yours as an employer. So I really feel it is time to stop and think rationally. If we're ever going to do that, now is the time to keep a cool head, pull the right people together, because really significant decisions are needing to be made, and the implications thought through rationally. So the various options that may be available to you will each have their own implications potentially, and those implications really could have far-reaching impacts on the business even after COVID-19 is behind us. So Second thing I'd say is stop all work-related travel, any retreats, face-to-face meetings, non-essential meetings like that, and look at ways, like Jeremy said, that you can utilize technology like Zoom and Skype to run your meetings. I mean, if they're less than 40 minutes long, then Zoom's completely free. So the next thing I'd say is hygiene. If you haven't already, start reminding your employees that others that are entering your workplace, including contractors, visitors, of the importance of personal hygiene and the standards that you're going to keep in your workplace there to protect the spread of infection. You could be displaying posters in the building. You could consider putting up notices around the office, regular updates to employees on good hygiene, checking that the cleaners maybe of your buildings, that you're happy with the standard of cleaning that they're doing, making sure that your contractors are receiving this information on hygiene as well. Moving on to more the fair work sphere, so looking at your employment contracts, and Jeremy mentioned this before. You'll have employment contracts, modern awards, enterprise agreements, policies, all those sort of documentations that will potentially dictate various options that are available to you in terms of how you manage business continuity through the workforce. They may provide options for managing the situation and also looking at any obligations on your business that you need to comply with. That's where you'll find those obligations. They'll be dictated in there. So you might come across things like people are talking about shutdown. We'll use a shutdown situation, like often Christmas and Easter and things like that. Just be careful with that, because there's usually notice periods, quite lengthy notice periods. Working from home could be a realistic and practical option. Obviously, it's going to be the most practical option for most businesses. So some workplaces have adopted that across their whole workforce, like Jeremy said. Some have teams coming in alternating, coming in on alternate days or alternate weeks. So there's a lot of considerations that you need to take in when looking at working from home. So pull out the working from home policy and take a look at it. If you don't have one, look at developing, and you'll want to communicate, make sure in that policy you're communicating a lot about your expectations of people while they're actually working from home. Some may never have worked from home, but there's a lot of things you'll need to consider before that actually starts, about do they actually have internet connections at home? Do they have internet plans that have enough data on them? There's workplace health and safety concerns. They'll need to look at auditing their, going through and checklists as far as making sure that their workplace is safe there. Now, I'm not going to go through the whole list of things as far as considerations for working from home. There's a lot, but one thing I did want to note, connection of mine mentioned today, consider special cases like people who don't actually want to stay at home due to things like domestic violence. So think through whether there's possibly a different office or a different location that they can work from. The next thing, moving on from fair work, is communicate. Communicate. This is a psychological as well as physical sort of change that we're all going through. So communicate with your workers via email, that you and management are carefully monitoring and considering the advice from government and health officials, and that you'll be communicating regularly, and do communicate regularly with them. Workplace health and safety. Now that's the second piece of legislation out there under the HR banner. Employers need to consider and demonstrate your commitment to your workplace health and safety obligations. Employers have a duty of care to provide a safe workplace and environment, and actively put measures in place to eliminate or manage the risks that are arising from this COVID-19. And that extends also to visitors to your workplace and your contractors. So let's not forget here that workplace health and safety these days also covers psychological risks. So control measures that are going to be practical and reasonable in your workplace will depend on the work being carried out and the nature of your particular workplace. So just be mindful that the home environment is considered a workplace, and you need to identify risks and look at control measures and implementing those and monitoring that those are adequate to manage the risks and the hazards. The final area I wanted to touch on was exclusion of workers. Now, this is the biggest area. This is where all the phone calls are coming through to our team about, what about this scenario? What about that scenario? What if this employee is sick? What if they're not sick, but they have to, remain isolated? So I'm just going to whiz through the main questions that we're being asked in here at HR Tactics. And I just want to preface it by saying that all these scenarios and advice, before moving to implement any of the advice that we're giving you tonight, you really do need to review the terms of any of those contracts, industrial instruments, policies and procedures. So, so one of the biggest questions is, who has to self-isolate? So all people who arrive in Australia from midnight 15th of March, and all people who think they may have been in close contact with a confirmed case. So they're required to isolate for 14 days. What if an employee is sick with COVID-19? How do they get paid? So they can take paid sick leave. If they run out of paid sick leave, there's unpaid leave. There's other types of leave that they can talk to you about. What if an employee is not unwell but is carrying the virus, deemed to be, doctors have said they're carrying the virus, and is required to self-isolate? So they can take sick leave, personal leave, and if they run out of personal leave, they can take paid carers leave. If they run out of that, they can apply to take unpaid carers leave. Might talk to you about taking annual leave. Employers might choose to grant them leave without pay, or what's called paid special leave. Any other leave that might be available to them, long service leave. So these are conversations that the employee and the employer, have to have with them on a case-by-case basis. Alternatively, the employee can work from home if that's appropriate, and if they're able to. One of the big ones, contact with a confirmed COVID-19 but has no symptoms, are they considered fit for work? So I just want to be clear here that to qualify for personal leave, an employee must be not fit for work because of an illness or an injury affecting them. So while the recommendation is to self-isolate, there's actually no entitlement to access personal leave because they're not deemed as sick. The next one was, what happens with casual employees? Unfortunately, casuals are likely to be the most severely impacted financially because they don't accrue paid annual or sick leave and therefore not entitled to be paid. The casuals may not have an alternative source of income, so employers might decide to avoid sending casuals home. Some employers might send them home and pay them. That's up to you guys to work out. But just be careful again with casuals that there's nothing in the awards or their contracts or enterprise agreements that actually is around changing their shifts. So due to a downturn, just be sure to consult those documents to ensure you're managing those shift changes in accordance with the relevant provisions. I might just go through two more, and there are a number of others, but they'll probably come up in questions, so we can cover those off then. Big one was, can we send people home out of caution? So no one seems to be sick in the workplace, but you're worried about everyone's safety and you think, no, I want them out of caution, I want to send them home. So yes, the answer is yes, but you will need to continue to pay them. So just to be clear here, we're talking now about full-time and part-timers. So where an employer directs a full or part-time employee to stay home, in line with the Australian government's health and quarantine advice, and the employee is not sick, with the coronavirus, the employee should ordinarily be paid while the direction applies. So if they're able to work from home and you consider that's appropriate in the circumstances, then they can work from home and be paid. However, if you want to direct your employee, your full-time or part-time employee, to stay home out of caution, but the employee cannot do any work from home, that's been another big one, that's also fine, but you will need to continue paying the employee their usual wage regardless of this absence. And this is what they're categorising as special paid leave. And the last one I'll mention here is, a lot of people have been asking, what if an employee of mine wants to stay home or is refusing to come to work? So if it's feasible for them to work from home and be productive, then that's an arrangement worth exploring, obviously. But if not, then as with any circumstances where an employee wishes to take the time out of the workplace, they need to come to an arrangement with you, their employer, that best suits their workplace, such as making a request to work from home, if that's a practical option, or maybe to take some form of paid or unpaid leave, such as annual leave or long service leave. So normal leave application processes in the workplace apply. If the employee does not enter into an arrangement with you, their employer, or use paid leave, they're not entitled to payment in those circumstances. So that covers the big ones that we have been asked about over the last few days. And I might hand back to Jeremy there, because there'll probably be lots of other questions about ones I haven't mentioned, and we can cover them at that time.
Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, there's lots there, and I hope everyone got something out of that. And yeah, if you've got questions, start to put them in the chat, and we'll hear from Roger now, and then we'll go into questions. So Roger, do you want to go through? You've got a bit of a slide presentation as well, so I think I need to give you hosting privileges. Now you should be able to do that.
Okay, thanks Jeremy, thanks Jackie. Welcome everyone. I guess I've been gifted with the task of making tax interesting, which I'll try my best. This can be a little bit of a dull topic, but last Thursday the Prime Minister announced a stimulus package, which is probably the first along the line of, I think there'll be 2 or 3 packages potentially come out, and I think this will hold the webinars as each one of those come out, as there's updates. The first stimulus package was announced last Thursday, and it was mainly focused at small business, and there's also a little bit in there for pensioners and people receiving Centrelink benefits. So I won't touch too much on those, because I think just about everyone on the call here has a small business or an interest in a small business, so we'll probably focus all the time on that. So I'm just going to share my screen here and get the slides up. Okay, so the stimulus package was announced last Thursday, and primarily it's focusing on supporting small businesses and then also the elderly and those that are unemployed. So the first one that was announced is the instant asset write-off threshold, which has been increased from 30K up until 150K. As an accountant, I was actually quite excited when it moved from 1K up to 30K. So to see it go from 30K to 150K is unheard of. It's unprecedented. Like, this is a massive opportunity for anyone out there that's running a small business to acquire an asset. It has to be acquired pre 30th of June 2020. So you've got a 3-month window of opportunity to grab that asset. It needs to be an active asset, like something that you're using within your business. So a good example would be a van, a delivery van, a small truck, might be an excavator, might even be a printing press if they come that cheap. I'm not sure they do. But something like that, which is up to 150K. So what that means is, it doesn't mean it's going to reduce your tax by 150K. So that's one of the most common questions I get. Like, does this mean I'm going to get 150K back? No, it doesn't. What it means is it's going to reduce your taxable profit by 150K. So for example, if you're running a small business and you have 200K of profit, which for a mum and dad business, that's quite nice, and you want to reduce your taxable income to 50K, then you'd go out and buy an asset for 150K. And then the next question I often get asked is, yeah, but I haven't got 150K to go out and buy this asset. That's okay, because you get it on finance, whether it be a loan, chattel mortgage, whatever it may be. So the beauty of this is you get the instant tax write-off, so the 150K reduction in taxable income, but you can actually finance 100% of the asset purchase and then pay it off over 48, 60 months, whatever the loan agreement may be. So that's fantastic in the first year, but do bear in mind that in the second, third, fourth year of the asset, because it's 100% written off, then there's no further tax benefit to be gained. So you're effectively, under the old system, an asset like that would be depreciated over its useful life. So what I mean by that is you'd take 4, 5, 6 years to depreciate the asset and you'd gain a little bit of tax benefit each year. Under this new measure, you're going to get the tax advantage all in the first year. So if you feel that you've got a surplus of taxable income this year, this is a fantastic opportunity for you to legally reduce your tax. Bear in mind though, this is only available to small businesses. So if you use the traditional depreciation rules, where you depreciate things over useful life, you cannot claim this concession. So you've got to be using the small business depreciation rules when you claim it. But speak to your accountant and he'll take you through that if you're not sure. So this is a really good one, and I'm sure there'll be a few questions, but I'll move on to the next one and we'll take questions after I've explained all of the measures. Okay, so what about those assets that you purchased pre-Thursday last week? So what the government have introduced there is temporary accelerated depreciation to deduct the first 50% of an asset immediately. So what that means is if you've already bought that asset for 150K and you're currently depreciating it, then you can depreciate 50% of that asset. So it's not quite as good as if you go out and buy one, but it's still 50%. So there's a vastly accelerated opportunity there to depreciate. But again, similar to the 100% write-off in the first case, you need to be confident that you're going to actually achieve the tax or reduction in taxable income, because the scenario you want to avoid is using up all your depreciation in 2020 and then actually having more taxable income in 21 and 22. So that's the scenario that you want to avoid. So you need to be quite careful and you need to work with your accountant closely as to whether you take advantage of this particular measure or not. Okay, so the third one, this one is really good. Like I've never really heard of something like this being implemented anywhere in the world, and when I heard it, I thought, oh, this is fantastic. So it's up to $25,000 cash payment from the ATO. This is probably the one that I've been inundated the most with questions. How do I get this 25 grand? And well, the answer is, first and foremost, you need to employ people. So it's not available to sole traders or even companies where they don't employ anyone. And it's available to employers with who withhold PAYG withholding tax up to $50,000. And then the test period is from the 1st of January 2020 through the 30 June 2020. So for most people, that's just your March BAS and your June BAS. But for the larger employers that are lodging monthly or have IASs, that includes 6 statements there. So the way it works is you get back 50 cents for every dollar less than the 50,000 in PAYG. So if you've got 20 staff and you're withholding $10,000 a month, that'd be $60,000 for the 6-month test period. So you're over $50,000. So you would receive the 25,000 cash back. While I haven't read anything, but what's usually the case in these situations, if you currently have a tax debt, either income tax or integrated client account, it is most likely the 25,000 will be offset against your tax debt, which it's not a bad result at the end of the day. Another thing that I've been asked a lot about is this relevant to mums and dads when they pay themselves? Well, the answer is yes. Like if you're a director of a company, your own company, and you're an employee and you're registered for single touch payroll and you're paying yourself a wage and withholding tax normally as you would for any other employee, I can't see any reason why you wouldn't be eligible for this, just like when you employ a bona fide employee. Having said all of that, though, I'd really like to have I haven't found anything that contradicts what I've just said, but provided you treat yourself, even though you might be the owner of the business, provided you treat yourself as an employee, which you should be, paying yourself superannuation and things like that, then you should be eligible for this as well. So that might mean that a couple of people pay themselves a little bit more during January to June, I'm not sure. But speak to your accountant about that. And some employees have a lot of staff which they don't need to withhold PAYG because they're under the threshold. So those guys get 2,000, which is that's not a bad measure either. Then the last thing I wanted to talk about was welfare recipients. So there's an instant cash payment of 750,000, and that's, from what I've read, it's essentially anyone that's receiving some sort of government benefits, so your pensions, unemployed, family tax benefits. So chances are there might be people on the call that can actually access all four of these measures. Like if you're in a business and you've got a good accountant and he's minimised your tax quite successfully, you can sometimes be eligible for family tax benefits. So you may be eligible for the instant cash payment of $750. So I guess I really wanted to present this sort of in a generic fashion. I'm sure there's going to be a whole host of questions that people want to ask, which is specific to their business. So we might hand back to Jeremy now and then open up the call line. So I'll just share here and back to you, Jeremy.
So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to, as I said, we're going to be running more of these. If there's no other questions, and Jackie and Roger, do you have anything else that you wanted to say?
There was one thing I wanted to touch on: psychological health.
Yep.
So yeah, do you want me to do that now?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So I mentioned before that the workplace health and safety arena, that whole area has really, you have to now consider psychological risks and psychological health as part of workplace health and safety now. So if COVID-19 is creating a psychological or psychosocial, as they call it, risk in your workplace, just remember that you as an employer have a duty to ensure, as far as practical, that your workers and other people are not exposed to those health and safety risks that arise in your business. So you need to manage, the design of the work, the design of the workplace, what solutions you're going to come up with this psychological side of work in mind. So there's lots of resources out there about this sort of stuff online. Beyond Blue, there's the Australian Psychological Society website. They've got some great information about tips on coping with coronavirus anxiety that I came across. Headspace as well on their website. They've got a big article on how to cope with stress related to the coronavirus as well. So it's just really important, I think, to understand that as humans, we all respond to different situations differently. While some people I've seen are really complacent and to the point of not being vigilant at all as far as hand hygiene, some are really panicking. So some people in your world might be feeling really anxious, worried. Some might actually have elderly who are at higher risk, or young babies, or people in their families and connections that have respiratory problems. So, you know, they're probably going through a lot more worry and stress at the moment. So many people be working remotely from home for the first time. So it's important to use, if people are working from home, I really recommend staying in touch with them as much as possible, using things like Zoom, having online meetings to keep the team together and informed. Turn on your camera when you're using them, and let those attending the meeting seeing your face. It'll make a huge difference to engagement and them feeling included. As you know, times like this, the small things really do make a difference. But I encourage employers to, even if they're feeling quite fine about this whole thing, accept that there will be people in your workforce that are certainly not, and everything in between. So be mindful of that in any plans that you're making. Consult with people. Under workplace health and safety legislation, there's a requirement to consult. So pull in the relevant people, and don't just make sweeping decisions yourself and then impose them on people. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say about psychological health.
Thanks, Jackie. And Karen made the point, what about the health of the employer? And I think you've covered a lot of that. One of the reasons we're doing this is for that reason, particularly because we see it in the marketplace. We want to help. One thing that I'll share in a minute, our email addresses if you've got any questions. Roger, did you want to say anything before I wrap up?
No, I'm actually looking forward to the second round of stimuluses. Because the one that I've explained tonight is wholly and solely focused on small businesses. Obviously, employees have not received a cracker yet. So I'm looking forward to something there. So once that's released, I'm expecting something to be released. When that is released, then we'll have to set up another call.
Yep, absolutely. Well, look, I know that this has been useful for everyone on the call. As I said earlier, and Roger just said, ask us if there's any questions, and we'll have another one of these. I'll just share a little graphic that I got done up earlier, just with our contact details. Obviously, my email address, Jackie's and Roger's. Feel free to take a screenshot of that. We will. I'll get an email out to everyone who was on this call tomorrow with our details. And I'll also, Rick, thank you for sharing that website. I'll share that in the email as well. Remember that things do get stressful. Stay calm, and if you're feeling overwhelmed, please feel free to reach out. That's what we're here for. We want to help everyone to get through this, and as a community, we'll get through this, and we'll come out of it better and stronger on the other side. Just finally, if you, there were a few people who joined who hadn't registered, who came through referrals from other people. First of all, thank you for sharing this around to other people. If you want, as the people who didn't register through Eventbrite, to receive the emails and notice for when the next ones are on, please email me, jeremy@smslaw.com.au, and I will make sure that your name goes on the mailing list, so that when we do another one of these, which will probably be sometime next week, I imagine, once new measures are announced, we'll get that out there. So please share that, and look forward to catching up with everyone next week and making sure that we can all help everyone. All right, thanks everyone.